Hello, Tim from Fair Play Now on the 26th of January 2023. Just finished a job changing over a couple of lights and also moving another light. So it was what I call an NLJ. Nice little job, that stands for. Nice customers, a smallish job, so not really too much to give you headaches about or anything like that. Went smoothly and a reasonable amount of profit, so an NLJ indeed. Anyway, a couple of amendments or additions, whatever you want to call them, to a couple of my recent videos. First of all, the one yesterday where I had my little rant about this Alessandro Ciani, University of Portsmouth guy, who was supposedly kind of having a go at the Unveed for not warning the Veed about the thing, even though we knew all about it. And I had a right old rant about that yesterday. But a lot of comments and also some other things I saw online suggest that that article might not have been 100% genuine. It was some kind of spoof or joke or just some kind of false thing. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And that may well be the case. I just literally saw the thing and I was making a comment on it. But what I would add to that is, even if it was a false thing, that line of thinking clearly exists out there somewhere to a greater or lesser degree, that we Unveed are to blame for not warning the Veed sort of strongly enough or whatever. And I wouldn't be surprised, even if that was a fake thing, if it was some kind of test to see if that line of thinking flies with the general public. And if it did fly, which it clearly hasn't, but if it had have done, you can bet your life that things like that would have started appearing in other publications and mainstream media, etc. And then if it didn't fly, which, like I say, I don't think it has done, they could just turn around and go, oh yeah, that was just a joke, that was just a bit of satire or whatever. One of the reasons why I set this channel up and I make all these videos and have done for 2.5 years nearly now, there was a few reasons, but one of the main ones is for it all to act as a historical document. Because even back then when I started, I knew deep down that we would kind of win and that everything would come out eventually. Don't ask me how I knew. I just knew deep down that that would be the case. And I also knew that there would be a lot of gaslighting, a lot of smoothing over the cracks kind of thing by the other side, sort of playing things down, a lot of gaslighting. Things like, you know, oh yeah, you Unveed going on about the discrimination you faced. It wasn't as bad as what you're saying it is. Things like that. Or, you know, when people sort of say to you, you know, oh, what do you think of all of this stuff coming out now, that the whole Lurgy Big V thing might just be a scam, a big scam, and you come out with stuff like, oh well, I knew from day one or a very early sort of stage that was the case, then they'll turn around and go, yeah, righto, I don't believe that, mate. Well, you can turn around in it with anything like that. I've got the video proof to say that what we were sort of thinking and saying and coming out about was actually the case. It's on record. So any bit of gaslighting going forward in the future, you can sort of, well, I can at least pull up an appropriate video, and say, well, you know, look at this video I made back in 2021. So, you know, this is what I was saying, this is what was happening. And yeah, you know, you haven't got a leg to stand on, basically. So I think a lot of this kind of thing will come out as we go forward. As the mainstream narrative collapses, we will see a lot of gaslighting, etc. But both myself with this channel and many other channels, we have got the proof and we have got the historical record, and we can just, you know, nip anything like that in the bud. That's what I wanted to do with yesterday's rant as well. I just wanted to nip that kind of line of thinking in the bud and expose it for the ridiculousness it was. And because, like I say, people up and down the country will be thinking like that, maybe not really expressing it, and that even if that article was a fake one, there will be people thinking like that up and down the country for real. And I just wanted to nip that in the bud. So that's the first little amendment or addition. The other one relates to a video I made the day before yesterday, or maybe a day before that. I said that Thailand, despite lifting their requirement for Big V before entering the country, they'd actually brought it back in just very recently. But again, a lot of commenters said, yeah, they did do that, but they then lifted it again. Yeah, that only lasted for like a day or 2 days, purely and simply because the people in Thailand weren't having it, especially the tourist industry. They just stood up and said to the government, no, sorry, we're not having this, get rid of it. And there was a big outcry, and they lifted the requirement for the Big V to enter Thailand, which is fantastic, isn't it? That just shows how a bit of pushback from the people can get results. Anyone who thinks that this kind of pushback is a waste of time, that is proof that it's not, that we aren't wasting our time with this kind of thing. So what a fantastic result, and thanks to the people who corrected me on that. That's, yeah, really great, and it really gladdened my heart. But if only people just pushed back like that from right at day one, 23rd of March 2020, or 24th of March maybe by the time it got to it, 2020, we'd all just carried on as normal. Everything had just stayed open, everybody had just carried on working, and we'd just given a great big middle finger to the government and the other governments of the world. You know, if we'd just done that from day one, we wouldn't have had what we've experienced in the last 3 years. So yeah, that Thailand thing is a really good lesson that we should sort of look at, I think, and remember. So that was great news. And more good news, well, the Big V narrative is collapsing by the day, isn't it? First of all, we've got footage of Jill Bates, you know who I'm talking about. He was saying, well, basically he was trashing the Big V. Yeah, that guy, he was actually trashing it. He was saying that it doesn't block transmission, it's not long lasting, and it's not broad, so it's very specific. It might sort of protect people against one variant, but if a new variant comes along, it doesn't protect you against that. So effectively he was totally trashing the Big V and the whole narrative behind it. So if he's coming out with stuff against it, well, you know, the narrative really must be collapsing. And more evidence of that is the UK have recently announced that boosters, the Rooster boosters, won't be offered to the under 50s as from February the 12th, I think, and the Rooster Booster kind of program will be ended on that date for people of any age, so I believe. And also they were talking in this article about actually finishing with the first two as well, sort of at some stage later on in the year. So of course they're sort of saying, well, they're not saying what the real reason is why they're doing that, but I think it's well, we know what's going on, and I think the report, it seems a bit low, but the report said that it's just a very tiny percentage of the under 50 population actually went for the Rooster Boosters this time round, something like 0.1% of them, which, if that is a true figure, that is amazing. That is, yeah, that just explains why the government aren't sort of bothering with it anymore. People just aren't having it. I would have thought it's just a bit higher than that, although I do agree it must be a very tiny amount of the population now, especially in the younger age groups, because the amount of people you hear saying that they're just not going to have any more of the things is, well, I'm sure you know people who have said that, I know people who have said that. So yeah, I think the Big V narrative is really collapsing, and they're just in damage limitation mode. I think they're in now, the powers that shouldn't be in the mainstream and the government. And when you see mainstream media articles, they're getting ridiculous now. I'm going to just finish with a little bit of commentary on the mainstream media, because some of the things they're coming out with now and what they're saying, it's almost, I can compare it with what Goebbels was coming out with in about March, April 1945, you know, where he was sort of most likely saying, oh yeah, you know, Germany's about to win the war, you know, there's going to be a huge turnaround and we're going to win the war, when in actual fact they were sort of only, well, you know, about a month away from sort of final defeat. And that is kind of the desperation I'm kind of sensing off the BBC and the mainstream now. And if anyone from the mainstream are watching, yes, I do put you in the same category as that guy I just mentioned. I think you're equally as despicable and equally non-adhering to the truth. And I think what you've done is absolutely disgraceful, but your desperation is just so completely obvious, not to people like me or just to people like me, but to pretty much everybody now, apart from the very brainwashed, or whatever you want to call them. But I think the vast majority of people are just sensing the desperation of the BBC and the mainstream now, and so they should be, because yeah, the narrative that they've been coming out with for the last 3 years is rapidly collapsing now. And with that thought, I'm going to leave it for today. I'll be back tomorrow. Tim from Fair Play Now. Thanks for watching.